What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of The Marvels, the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe film starring Brie Larson, Teyonah Parris, and Iman Vellani. Been a minute for Captain Marvel as a character. Of course, Captain Marvel solo debut film 2019, in between Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, became a big hit as a result, presumably buoyed by Avengers hype. And since then, we've only really seen her in those Avengers movies, and it's been a bit of a wait. And Kamala Khan, of course, debuted last year on Disney Plus in the Ms. Marvel series. And Teyonah Parris popped back up for a little bit in WandaVision, getting the powers for Monica Rambeau. So now we have, a trio movie, as opposed to just a straight-up Captain Marvel sequel, even though I think a lot of the plot is still very much Captain Marvel-y, at least per that last movie we got. And obviously, this is coming at a troubling, distressing time for Marvel and the MCU. MCU has been on a cold streak. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Secret Invasion, Jonathan Majors, legal issues. Lots been going on. Most of it not very good. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, very good. But that is now over, and we attribute most of that credit to James Gunn and the trilogy capper continuity, right? So, what is the MCU to do? Well, for starters, we know that they're going to have a lot of time to figure it out because partially due to the SAG strike and the writer's strike, they've delayed most of their movies to 2025 and beyond. Only Deadpool 3 is releasing next year. So I think we're going to get a few TV shows. The Agatha Show, Echo, dropping in the beginning of January. Ironheart as well. That's it. So the MCU is going to be a bit quiet. And honestly, the Marvels, there's a lot of negativity about this, right? We know the box office projection is quite low, which I think is not necessarily to blame solely on this movie. I think there's definitely a lack of hype for this movie, given that there's not a lot of love for the first Captain Marvel, but also this Marvel cold streak has kind of become a snowball rolling down the hill type situation where things keep compounding. So performance aside, I'm actually pretty pleased with how the Marvels turned out, notably going in with low expectations. But the way went and the way it's ended and what it's actually setting up, I was quite pleased with. I was not expecting the Marvels to actually be like a storytelling and continuity pushing forward movie to the degree that it was. I thought, it would establish Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, Iman Vellani for the movie audience, and that would kind of be the main aim. And that is certainly done, by the way. Iman Vellani, amazing in this. The best part of it, really funny, feels right at home, definitely feels like a pillar of the MCU going forward. But along those lines, there are some interesting places where this movie leaves you. Now, obviously there was a lot of mixed reception going into this movie. I had a good time with it. There are a lot of faults to it, but I actually enjoyed it more than I expected to. And I think some of these faults are quite interesting in the sense that how is the MCU still making these mistakes? One of these, of course, is just the unmemorable villain. In this case, it's Dar-Ben, a Kree warlord with a connection to Captain Marvel. And a lot of the stuff with the villain is kind of plot points picked back up and continued from plots in Captain Marvel 2019. And we've certainly had unmemorable villains with the MCU. It's kind of been a common refrain for the most part. Unless the villain was really awesome, like a Thanos, like a Killmonger, like a Vulture. Usually they're in the complete other side of the camp where they're not very good. And this is definitely towards the very bottom of the barrel. That being said, I didn't necessarily care because I was just having a good time with the three characters. I think the way the movie is structured, where Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, and Miss Marvel, they basically get their powers temporarily connected and stuck in a web because they're all like light-based powers. I think a lot of the logic of how that power swapping worked, where when they would both try and use their powers at the same time, they would swap places. The logic of that was a bit confusing to follow, but I just went with it because I think that opening set piece where they're in a fight and they keep basically teleporting around and stuff as they start destroying the Khan family household as people are fighting and flying through the roofs and whatnot. that was really fun. I think that was kind of Marvel comedic action at its best, to be honest. Um, and I think from there, like, we also have Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury, and his space station up in the clouds there, Saber. That was kind of the big, like, other MCU tether here. Obviously, Fury and Rambeau starting out in close connection to each other as they're working together. And I was not expecting to have as much Fury again. Fury was a big part of Captain Marvel 2019, even having those flashback scenes with, Rambeau's mother, played by Lashana Lynch. And we have Fury once again, and I think Fury ends up being a big part of some of the best humor as well, because Captain Marvel's cat, that's not a cat, Goose, the tentacle cat, we get a lot more of the cat stuff in this, and I think the cat stuff is just really funny. It's great stuff. In general, the humor, I think this is some of the best MCU humor we've had in a while, certainly some of the most consistent, and a lot of it is really due to Iman Vellani's charm. She, I think, kind of plays off Rambeau and Carol Danvers really well. Like, she gets some of the best laugh lines, the best reactions. It all works. Also, the Khan family, still very charming to spend time with. I think they all have kind of great chemistry together, and also make for some great humor. I think one of the issues with the Captain Marvel franchise, how this has all gone, is that, like, Brie Larson hasn't quite felt like the best fit for the MCU, which is definitely not something I saw coming. Of course, Brie Larson was in a ton of hit indie movies, really critically acclaimed actress, of course, culminating in winning Best Actress for Room. And yet, I think between her role in the MCU as Carol Danvers, as well as her even more recent role in Fast and Furious with Fast X, I think Brie seems to struggle, or at least be a bit inconsistent with her performance against green screen. I think Brie, like, her kind of default just kind of get, like, really wide-eyed, but you can tell she seems a bit uncomfortable in those, like, bigger scenes. I think the scene she shares, like, on their ship when it's her, Rambeau, and Kamala, was more heartfelt scene she's great in, and she's a great actor, but I think she does kind of struggle with some of the bigger set piece scenes, which is a bit unfortunate, and obviously she's talked a lot about not having the best time being in the MCU, catching flack online, which is unfortunate. So I'm definitely curious to, like, what degree Captain Marvel continues in the MCU. This movie makes no mistake about highlighting Kamala Khan's potential moving forward for the MCU, but I'm sure we'll be getting more Carol Danvers in the future, considering we know we'll be getting more Rambeau as well as the post credits lets on. But I think also one of the things I kind of appreciated about the Marvels as well was the Act 2 set piece when we're on the water planet and they have a connection to Carol's past. And there's basically this singing moment and the dance scene. And there's a scene with music involved. And it just felt very, I think, unique to the MCU. And even if it might come across as a little corny or maybe even not execute on that well, I really appreciated the attempt to, like, do almost like a type of camp like that, the way it went. So I thought that was pretty enjoyable. I have to say, though, like, later on in that, following that, like, music scene where you have the set piece, the action set piece on the water planet, the Marvel visual palette really does not do the sets any favors. The sets look way blander than they should. Those should not be, like, negatively viewed sets, but they just look so stale, the way, like, the classic, like, MCU film grading goes. And it's such a stark contrast to how Loki looks on Disney Plus, where the production design just goes so much further and looks so much better. So I think overall I thought the CGI was pretty good, definitely pretty acceptable in the Marvels, nothing to complain about. But yet, like, just the way, like, the lighting in the MCU, like the on-brand, like, lighting, definitely makes the sets look worse than they probably should. So yeah, and on the one hand, like, I understand why some people might not like the Marvels at all, right? You have uninspiring visuals, you have a very unmemorable villain, and you're already doing it with a lead character who's not the most popular in the MCU pantheon. So I understand why this is not going to work for everyone. And in general, I think the plot it's pretty hackneyed. Like, even if you're super into the Carol Danvers continuity from the first film, there's a lot of, I think, like skipping around, like Darben. I think there's a lot of show don't tell going on here, where or telling and not showing necessarily, where like the whole Kree backstory and the Kree versus Skrull War, all this hard MCU like storytelling monotony, right? I don't know, like we're just kind of skipping some steps here, and I was able to roll with it. It's fine because again, I was having a good time with the humor and the lighter stuff. I think you don't have to really care about that plot stuff, but if you're interested, at least it's there, right? It's continuing that kind of story, so I don't think it's all bad per se. I quite like Teyonah Parris as Monica Rambeau, especially when the trio are all together, because her more trying to keep her cool, keep her composure, keep her professionalism. That was, I think, really enjoyable. And watching Rambeau start to let her guard down with the others as the story progressed, I think that went pretty well. So yeah, like I had a good enough time with it. I think it's it's a bottom tier Marvel movie, but one of the better bottom tier Marvel movies, if that makes sense. We're talking 30 plus movies at this point. They can't all be great, but I think honestly, this would probably have a lot less negativity around it if it was coming out in a time where we didn't have a lot of other MCU disappointments and MCU uneasiness happening, So that alas, that's where we are. However, two key things happen at the end of this movie, and in a sense, they're probably the most essential things that kind of take place for MCU storytelling. But it's good to feel this way, that we're invested in the future of the MCU storytelling once again. We've kind of felt a little lost at sea with the MCU right now. One of those happens at the very end of the movie, where we see Kamala Khan come across Haley Steinfeld's Kate Bishop, of course introduced on the Hawkeye Disney Plus series, and she kind of makes jokes about the fact that they're both young heroes, but then mentions that she's putting a team together and recruits Kate Bishop. Very exciting. Not that we didn't know that like Young Avengers was coming, but now we actually see it on the runway. Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, Kate Bishop, and we know there's more people to come. Very exciting. Maybe they'll be led by Tom Holland's Spider-Man, who's to say. But we're getting Young Avengers. That's really cool. Looking forward to it. The other big development is, of course, in the post-credit scene for the Marvels. And we have not really talked about a meaningful MCU post-credit scene in some time. It's fun to be back. But following what happens at the end of the Marvels, where Monica Rambeau has disappeared through like space-time to save the world, the classic third act disaster aversion, right, as we know. I was not expecting Monica to be dead. And we see her, it's revealed that she's not dead right away in the post-credit scene, and she wakes up next to Lashana Lynch. But when, based off how they react, we realize that this Lashana Lynch, this Maria Rambeau, is not Monica's mother. And then, of course, we realize we're in a completely different universe, because who does Lashana Lynch speak to? None other than Beast, the Blue Beast, of course, from X-Men, once again played by Kelsey Grammer, who played him back in X-Men The Last Stand back in 2006. That's just a cool touch. And he names drops Charles, aka Charles Xavier. Really cool for a number of reasons. One, it's like the official confirmation that the X-Men are coming, and I think, the fact that this happened through space-time, it's pretty clear that the Secret Wars, Kang Dynasty, storytelling, it's going to lead us into a universe where the X-Men already exist and already are established. And that's obviously very exciting. That's how people thought this was going to go. But again, we see it on the runway now, and we can get excited. Also, I think underrated aspect of this, obviously Beast and the X-Men will get all the attention, all the oxygen, but having Lashana Lynch back in the MCU is really great, because, of course, Lashana Lynch playing Monica Rambeau's mother in the main MCU canon, passing away during the blip from sickness. Lashana Lynch, great actor, great action star, as we've seen in The Woman King, in No Time to Die, charismatic performer. It's great that she's back in the MCU, because she can be an asset to MCU storytelling, in my opinion. So I'm happy that you have this version of Lashana Lynch available moving forward. I thought the last go around we'd have with her would kind of be what we saw in Multiverse of Madness, where it was like a cool nod, where different universe she was the Captain Marvel. Alas, we're going to get some more. I believe this is the binary version, which is like a Captain Marvel alter ego in the comics from what I understand. Either way, I'm really happy that Lashana Lynch will be back, and we get the confirmation that both the X-Men and the Young Avengers are closer than we think. So those are two things that are more or less independent of the movie. So perhaps I'm grading on a curve, but I genuinely enjoyed myself despite a lot of obvious flaws to the movie. So given the low expectations, I'm pretty pleased. Maybe it's just the rose-colored glasses of the look ahead with the reveals and stuff. Who's to say? But let me know, how'd you feel about the Marvels? Are you as pleasantly surprised as I am? Are you excited about the post-credit scene and the Young Avengers reveal? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time.